Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to show you how you can take some just regular grocery store bags and turn them into a plastic yarn, which is often called plarn, for making totes for using as beach bags or for grocery shopping as your reusable grocery shopping bag. And it makes a very sturdy bag. And I've had this one for maybe 6-7 years or more. And right now I'm using it, I use it for when we go for drives, if we have to go to town or wherever, and I throw my yarn in here, and this is what I use for when I'm to work on crochet projects while I'm on the road. And I've used this as not so much a beach bag, but when we have gone to different events where you have to camp out and all that kind of stuff, for putting all my toiletries and stuff in, the things I want to take to the shower. And that worked really well because it's plastic. I don't have to worry about it getting wet. It's not going to be impervious to water getting through it, obviously, because it's crocheted, but I don't have to worry about the water damaging the bag. And so that's why it also makes a great beach bag, because if water or sand even get in it, it's just going to work its way out, and it's fairly water resistant. But it's just also a fun way to use to take plastic bags and turn them into something that can last for a very long time, and to upcycle, so it's not just ending up in landfills. So I have another bag started here, and mostly what we get around here, we live in a remote town, and most of the bags we get are either going to be white or green. Green is our one grocery store, and so most of the bags we get, and this is when people donate them to me, are green grocery bags, because we don't go shopping enough to get enough for me to do this. So a tote like this takes about 50 to 60 grocery bags. And then when I make the little cell phone pouch, I don't have one to show you, but I can show you some pictures here of some different sets that I've made. And it's a cell phone pouch, but it also works really great for other things, whether it be just some valuables you want to keep separate from whatever's inside your bag. You can hook the thing on the inside of the bag or on the outside of the bag, however you want to do it. And that way it just makes it more usable, adds a little more padding to whatever things that you have in there. So again, this is another one that I got started. I put one up on the store yesterday, and it sold within about 15 minutes of me putting it up, which really surprised me. And I did it as a set. And so I'm not going to show you how to make the bag per se, but what I want to do is show you how you can make your yarn out of the plastic bags. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here, starting with the best way to cut the bags and get them and turn them into yarn. Okay, so there's a reason why I have these breaking boards sitting here, because they're the right length and size, and then two of them, it makes a good weight for laying on top of the bag. So when you go to cut the bags, I used to cut them for some crazy reason. I think years ago when I started doing this, I was cutting them one at a time. However, it's actually easier to cut out more at a time than just one. So I recommend laying out a minimum of 4 bags at a time. I've gone up to 7. You don't really want to go more than 7. 7 you can go, this is actually, these particular bags we get at our local grocery store are the best ones I've got for these types of grocery store bags. This kind here is a little bit too thick, but you can use it too. A little bit, makes it a little bit harder to work with. Walmart bags are so-so. They're somewhere in between. And then there's some bags, like Dollar Tree bags, are pretty much worthless, so I wouldn't use these. But I like our local grocery store because they're the biggest ones like this, and they're also more sturdy in general. And so, but because they're just a little bit thicker than the Walmart ones, I usually only lay 5 to 6 bags out at a time. When I'm doing the Walmart bags, I'll go up to 7 bags. The problem, though, it's not so much of the thickness being hard to go through. It's that if you get too many, then it can be hard to just work with it when you're trying to cut it and not have it kind of turn into a big old mess. So I'll finish laying these bags out, and then I'll show you how I cut them. Okay, so I'm laying out my last bag, and what you want to do, in case I didn't really talk about it, so I want to make sure you pay attention, that make sure it's folded. You'll notice that it indents. You'll want it right side out, not inside out. It's going to be harder to cut. And then fold it neatly, and make sure your bottom edges are aligned very well, and then just spread it out and get it as flat as you possibly can. Now here's where a big book or something like that, or heavy board or something will come into play. Is that once you get, okay, they're moving around on me. Once you get this laid out the way you want it, then you don't want to cut those handles off yet, because those handles you're going to use right now, because you're going to lay your heavy book or whatever it is right on top of those handles. So that's going to help hold everything in place. You can go as heavy as you want. Obviously, the heavier this is, the easier it's going to make this whole process. So then take your scissors, start from the bottom. You're going to cut all this off. You might want to go high enough up because the bags are going to move, to make sure you get all of the edges. And this you're just going to toss. From here, you're just going to make strips that are at least 1 inch wide. I've tried going skinnier on the strips, and when you're cutting out this much at a time, that's going to be harder to do. And I recommend, especially for making the totes and things like that, that you go with at least 1 inch wide. I don't measure it, I just eyeball it and then just cut. So typically I find I have to actually cut first, and then once I get to a certain point, I can just slide the scissors across, cut, slide, and then cut again at the end. Sometimes it doesn't slide through this many bags as well. You can try that, but a lot of times when you get it to the end, it wants to catch like that. Okay, so just keep doing that until you got the whole bag, all of the bags cut into strips. And what you're going to have here is loops. You don't want broken loops. And that's why the other parts of the bag are, I'm sure you can find ways to use them, but really they're, for what we're doing here, I personally have not found any use for the handles or the bottom piece that I cut off. But regardless, you're still taking most of the bag and turning it into something else. So if you know people that just have a whole bunch of grocery bags and they don't know what to do with them, this is an option that, because a lot of times people just get enough bags, they'll just go ahead and take them to the dump or whatever. Well, you can rescue them from the landfill and do something like this. Make great gift ideas. I put them in auctions and stuff too for charitable things, and people really like them. Okay, so once you have your loops, and you'll notice, especially when you cut those top ones, you might find some where the pieces, you might have a piece that's kind of weird like that. You can choose to, I'm going to toss that one because it's just a little too weird. But sometimes a little bit on there is not such a big deal. It just depends. You want to check the strength of it. Don't pull too hard. But I'll probably use those, maybe. That one's fine. These ones might be a little bit weird. Okay, so now here's where we take this and we actually turn it into yarn. So keeping it in loops is important. So I'm going to show this several times in slow motion. So what you do is you take your loops, bring it through like this, okay? Then bring this one through and pull this side. Make sure you grab from the bottom of this and pull it. Don't pull too hard or you will break it. Once it's doubled over and crocheted, then it's pretty strong. But when you're yanking on it like that, it can be too easy to break. So let me show this again. So this is going to be my starting piece. This is where I'm going to start my hook. Then I put it through there like that and then wrap it around itself this way. Now I also have some photos I took several years ago. They probably won't be super clear because it was an old camera. But years ago I took pictures showing how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this a couple more times, and then I'm going to show you the series of pictures so that way you can see it in a couple different ways. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this while I show a few pictures that show how you loop it together, and hopefully those pictures will be helpful. Just to give you another view and also in a different color. Because I believe in those pictures I was using white. And once you get your rhythm down, you can get pretty quick at this. But the main thing, one of the main things is when you're pulling this, grab it from the bottom and then pull it straight like that. If you grab it wrong, if you just grab it anywhere and pull it, sometimes it's going to be lopsided. Now that turned out straight, but if you just grab one of these and don't grab the whole thing, what's going to happen is you're going to pull it and you're going to end up with too much on one side. So you want to keep that so it's straight and it's even, okay? But if that happens, because I still have it happen from time to time where I get going really fast, looping these together, and just kind of becomes a mindless activity. And sometimes I'll accidentally grab just one piece or grab it in the wrong place, like I kind of did right there, and then end up with a loop. You can still work with it. Once you pulled it too tight, once you pulled it tight like this, it's almost impossible to get it apart without having to just cut it. So just leave it and don't worry about it, because I'll show you in a minute what you can do with that when that happens. So anyway, the great thing about this is unlike with regular yarn, you don't have to have all of this yarn done up to start with. You can just make it as you go, because you may not know exactly how much you're going to need per project. So, and you just add on, you just keep adding on the loops on as you go. And so then you're just going to take your hook and whatever project you're going to do, just put it on there like you would normal yarn. And then you just crochet like you would normal yarn. Well, I shouldn't say like you would normal yarn. Sometimes getting that first started is kind of sticky. And you do whatever your foundation chain is, however many you need it to be. Now, I'll give you some pointers on the bag. When I make the totes like this one, I crocheted, I did a chain stitch that was about 1 yard long, so that when I go to finish out the bag and I go to stitch it together, it's going to be approximately 18 inches wide. Okay, so I'm working the bag from the bottom and going up. And then when I get done, I'm going to stitch the edges together, along the side and then the bottom. So anyway, you just keep working your chain for as long as you need it. Okay, I'm going to leave this because what this is going to be later is I'll turn that into the cell phone pouch that's going to go with this bag. So again, you're going to need, I would say, a minimum of 60 bags to make a tote this size. And I have, by the way, this is a size K hook, which is the 6.5 millimeter. So you can see right here, this is one of those strips where I ended up pulling it through wrong because I accidentally, as I was grabbing it, I grabbed one side and then it pulled and then it made it bigger on one side. Well, I stopped here on this project because I wanted to show you how right now I'm doing single crochets. So after I make my chain, I just do single crochet rows back and forth. And so when you get to that, if you get to that one weird piece where you've got a loop, just fold it over the rest of the yarn and just crochet with it just right over the top of it. It will work just fine. And if you get any funny ends, make sure that you pull it through, like there's an end right here. Make sure that you pull it through to the back side of the work, because I'm always going to have a side that's going to have, which I think is this side. Yeah. Where if I have any ends or any weird loops or anything like that, I'm going to have it come out the one side. That's going to be the inside part of the bag, so that I don't have any of that on the front side, and it just has a nice smooth look to it. And so anyway, you're just, for doing a bag or a cell phone pouch, just do single crochets. Now, you can do double crochets. I just don't recommend it. The first couple bags, or at least the first bag I made, I did double crochets, and I didn't like the way the bag turned out. It stretched too much when you put anything heavy in it, and I don't know, I just didn't like it near as much. I recommend going with a single crochet for a much tighter stitch. And you could use a smaller hook too if you want to. You just don't want to go too small. It's going to be too hard to crochet with it. So a size K is recommended. And then, like for this, what I'm doing, because I have more green bags than white bags, I'm starting with green, I'm going to end with green. And I do 5 rows of green and 4 rows of white. You can do this in any combination you want. Just keep in mind how tall, how deep you want your bag, and then how many rows you think that's going to be. So this is going to end up being a total of 41 rows because it ends up just right, because I want it to start with green, I want the white rows in between. There'll be 4 rows of white, like you'll see in this picture I'll show you right here. And then it's going to end with the green with 5 rows of green. And then I'll still use the green on the handles. Now, some other things, if you live in a place where you're blessed enough to have stores that have brown and gray bags or any other color that you can get plenty of, especially if you have friends and family that shop at those places and are willing to donate them to you, then you can do so many other things with your colors. And I've even seen people where they'll take a strand of yarn, just regular acrylic yarn, and combine it in with the plastic yarn. I haven't tried that yet, but I'm thinking about doing that on probably my next project. And what that can do is add even more strength as well as more color to give an interesting effect to it. So as far as changing colors, what I do here is notice how I have this long loop. This isn't the way I was doing it. This is actually something new I'm trying. So I have an end here simply because, well, I started the white new, fresh here, just like right here was where I started the green. And when I get to the end, I don't, instead of cutting whatever's left and then tying it, what I've been doing is leaving the loop and working it up as I go. And then I'll just start crocheting with this and then add to the white as I go. So, for example, so let's just say I'm doing this round right here, this next round. So what I do is I make sure this white strip, or if I'm using the white and the green is the one I'm working in, is right there like that, and then I'll just crochet right around it to make sure that it's following up. Now this isn't going to show when you go to stitch this together along the sides. All this, where the changes are gonna, the ends will be on the inside of the bag, and then the color changes will be hidden by the actual stitching that goes on. Now I know some people are going to have the question, like, when you're making a bag like this, why not just keep working in a circle? Well, whenever you're doing something with stripes, it's better to actually finish it. That's why I do it this way and then stitch it together. Now you could, if you wanted, when you make your chain, like the one I started over here, wherever it is, let's see, this is how I do it with the little pouch, is once I get the double the size, the width that I want the pouch to be, I want to make sure it's double, then I'll just fold it over, I'll make a loop, and then I will just keep crocheting around. I don't even count the rows. I just keep crocheting around until I get it the size, the length that I want the bag to be. Obviously, it's not going to be that narrow. And so I just keep working in a spiral is what I do. And then I'll crochet the top and the flap, and then I even make the little button. But I'm not showing that here. I'm just showing you how to make the yarn and how to work with it is what I'm trying to do. But also just for some tips, I recommend if you're going to add stripes like this, whether it be to your tote or to the smaller pouch or whatever it is you're doing, that you actually work in rows back and forth and then stitch it together. So when you go to stitch it together, let's say I'm all done here, and I'll just use this white piece here. It's not going to be actually long enough to stitch this whole edge together. You simply stitch it together like you would anything else. When you're crocheting, you just do a slip stitch. Okay, so I'm going to start off like that, and then just slip stitch the edges together like that. It's a little bit of a pain working through it that way. If you're just practicing with it, don't crochet too tight because it's a lot harder to pull out, especially because the little knots where the loops connect to each other. Okay, so that's how you're going to stitch it together. So again, once I get all the rows done, I turn the bag inside out and then slip stitch all the way down and across the bottom. And so I just keep adding bags as I go until I get to the end. And that's why it's kind of hard to say exactly how many bags are in it. I just know roughly how much goes in because I figure the math by, okay, how many bags, how many rows can I do per bag? Usually one bag, one of the green bags, will do one row on a tote like this. That's it. So then you count your rows from there. The smaller bags, like the Walmart bags and certain other types of grocery store bags like that, typically maybe only about 3/4 of a row that's that long. And then I figure a pouch takes at least 10 bags. And then you're gonna have quite a few bags, maybe 6 bags in each one of your handles that you're gonna do. Now when I do the handle, same idea, even though this isn't supposed to be about making the tote, same idea with the handle. You start fresh. Let's say I'm at the top of the bag. I usually figure in about 5 stitches in, and then I crochet the handle across with single crochets. I'm doing this really loosely because this is not going to be permanent. I crochet across 5 stitches, and usually one strip, one of these loops of a green bag is enough to do 5 stitches. Okay, I don't actually have enough to do 5 stitches because I had to have my end, but yeah. So one strip, one of these little pieces is enough to do 5 stitches. And then you just keep working that back and forth on your handle until you get it the length you want, and then come back down to the other side. So this bag was folded in half. As you can see here, once I make it as long as I need it to be, and then when I get to here, finish it out, then I just slip stitch right here, making sure that it's evenly aligned, okay, the same as the other side. So you want to maybe count your stitches, figure out, okay, how many stitches in do I want to go, and then I know I'm going to want to go 5 stitches across that way. And then you just slip stitch it, and then work your ends in on the inside. And then I always recommend, if you have anything to tie it off. Well, that's usually pretty easy because your end, you've got 2 sides, right? So when you cut it, then take those 2 edges. I usually take one end and work it under a stitch, and then just tie it in a square knot, and then add a couple more ties to the top just to make sure it's going to hold. And so you can see on the inside where I have my ends in different places. Sometimes this is from, which is another thing I wanted to bring up, if you're crocheting along and you pull a little bit too hard, or maybe you had a strip that you didn't notice that had a slit in it and it breaks on you, simply tie a good hard knot in it and then crochet that right in, making sure that your ends come out the other side. And you can even crochet the ends in, work them in like I did with the end pieces as I was working with it. So let's see, or like I did here, how I worked that loop in, I just crocheted it right in. And what I could do with this if I wanted to, just to be on the safe side, I can take this and try to work it under the stitches, or I could cut it and then wrap it around a stitch and then tie a good hard knot in that just to make sure it's going to stay. But I know it's not going to be a problem because of what it is. And anyway, so that's how you can make your own plastic yarn, and a few ideas of what you can do for making totes. It really does make great gift ideas, or things for, even if it's just for yourself, if you're wanting to make your own reusable grocery bag for taking to the store, and then just do that. You take all the grocery bags you've saved up all this time, make your tote, and now you don't need any more of the grocery bags. Well, you may need several of the totes, though, depending on how big your shopping trips are. Okay, well, I hope you found this video helpful on how you can upcycle some grocery bags into something usable. Now, I've seen people take these things and make wallets and all kinds of goodies out of them. Some people make blankets for the homeless. You don't have to worry so much about them getting wet, or something, some kind of mat that they can sleep on. Those are some interesting ideas. I've tried making like a little carpet out of it for outside, and it was so-so. But, it's something I don't have to worry about it getting wet or dirty because, well, it's plastic. Some people make cup holders and different things like that. So if you know how to crochet, you've got your basics. You know how to single crochet and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, I forgot to say this at the beginning. If you're new and you don't know how to crochet, I have a whole series just on the basics, learning how to do your chain stitch, learning how to do the slip stitch, and the single crochets like I used in here. And I'll go ahead and link to the series right up here. It's just the very basic stuff. So crocheting with this, what I'm showing you here, is for people that already have the experience. So learn your basics first, and then you can revisit this. But now at least you know how you can cut your bags and turn them into yarn, or a plastic yarn, for making whatever it is you choose to make. I wouldn't recommend making a sweater out of it, though. I just don't, or gloves. I don't think that would be very comfy. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.